On this week's episode, we discuss news from Toyota and Mercedes-Benz, cover the results from our annual owner satisfaction survey and how it relates to affordable luxury cars, and answer viewer questions. Next on Talking Cars. Hi everyone and welcome back. I'm John Lincove.
I'm Ryan Pizlikowski.
And I'm Jake Fisher.
And we're really happy that this is our, second, third weekly episode now, because we're giving everyone here an early holiday gift by appearing on your computer, in your ears, on your screen, your iPad, weekly. So Talking Cars Weekly, it is a great thing. We're rolling in the new year with a lot of car information, a lot of car news, on a regular basis. And kicking that off for car news is that Toyota has announced that they're going to be hitting, 10 electric cars by mid-2020, and they're going to have an electrified vehicle fleet. Jake, is this window dressing? Is this making people feel great, or is this a real thing? Because Toyota is pretty big with hybrids.
So there are a lot of automakers talking about electrified vehicle fleets in the future. Look, the cynical way of looking at it is that, wow, it's going to help their stock price and whatnot. Because quite honestly, electrified fleet really could mean no more than kind of a mild hybrid.
But it's got electric, so it means great.
Right, it's got, it's got an alternator and it's got a, whatever. But the point is that this is happening, and you look at Toyota, and boy, they have a great history in terms of hybrids. We're going on like 20 years now on their hybrid synergy drive or whatever they want to call it.
Marketing, yeah.
But it works well. Our Camry hybrid got 47 miles per gallon with very little compromise. So that's really a thing. But there are going to be lots of BEVs, battery electric vehicles, which are just batteries. And there's a couple things going on there. One is we figured out how to put really big batteries in cars and get 200 miles plus, but the other thing is China.
What about China?
So everyone's talking about, remember when we've talked about, what's going on in California and they're mandating electric vehicles. Well, China's doubling down on electrics, and they're really forcing manufacturers to do this. So if you want to be a global player, you're going to have to produce quite a bit of electric vehicles, pure electric vehicles, if you want to be a player in China, which is a huge market which dwars the American market.
Well, and you're also talking Europe, you're talking England, that all the, whether it's a city, Paris or London, or you're talking in other countries where they're saying, we're going to ban gasoline vehicles. So is this a play for it? Or is it going to be more of a hybrid situation? Yes, there'll be a battery vehicle, though, again, we've had the Bolt, which is an impressive vehicle, and we have Tesla Model 3 coming out, but still, they're not there as far as pure battery electrics.
That, for me, I think of people still haven't really adapted or gotten used to this full battery car because they're, range anxiety, all these other things. 2020 is not that far away, really. And I don't think by then people are still going to be that ready for these things. I think, like you said, there's going to be a lot of hybrids. More hybrids, that's good, but 10 vehicles, that's a lot of vehicles.
Yeah, to be pure.
To be pure electric, that's
right.
That's impressive, but I think that's a little ambitious.
I think that's where some of it's lost in nuance, like you're talking about. There's going to be the hybrids. There's going to be there's going to be mild and partial. They're going to be electrified.
Right.
But it's not going to be a full range of batteries falling from the sky in 2020.
But it's the world. So it's not about just the American market. Yes, we pay $2.50 a gallon, and we're like, I'll just pay for the gas. But in China and other parts of the world, they're going to have to do this.
Right. So a lot of it's in the message. Big is electrified makes people, like you said, stock price, everyone's excited. You're going to be competing with Tesla. But in reality, the fleet will change incrementally, probably in the United States, and like you said, the world. It rolls into a different vehicle that hit news this week as well. Mercedes is going to be bringing out the A-Class to the United States. Okay, so we've seen the B-Class, which is a small little kind of quasi-boxy hatchback, but. Right. Ryan, A-Class, you've seen the pictures, you've seen what it looks like.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
It looks cute.
Well, it's
a good-looking little Mercedes. But see, this is what Mercedes does. They make it look really good, and most of their cars, they're really nice cars to drive. But I fear a CLA or a GLA.
Mm-hmm. The sedan and SUV, right?
Yes.
Yep.
But going back to when we tested the CLA and the GLA, we were less than enthused with these vehicles. Mm-hmm. Are you just buying a badge for less money and then getting this subpar Mercedes.
Well, right. Are you getting, the experience, Jake, with a $30,000 Mercedes? First of all, can you even get a $33,000 or $34,000 CLA or GLA? That's the first question. Even that's the base price, but that's not how they're spec'd. But they are popular. They do sell.
So with Mercedes-Benz, I mean, certainly there's lots of really nice Mercedes-Benzes out there, right?
Oh, yeah.
You could drive, an E-Class or an S-Class. They're incredible. But there is certain, the badge is worth something. And I think they realize that. And, you talk about, I mean, the A-Class is nothing new for the world market, but A-Class sedan is new.
Yeah.
And if they're going to go and play in America, they need to have something that looks the part.
Right.
And they're going to do that. And I'm sure the thing's going to look great. Whether or not it drives anything like Mercedes, I doubt it, just because our experience with the CLA.
Yep. Another front-wheel drive
It's gonna be
Mercedes.
front-wheel
It's a
drive.
front-wheel drive.
Yeah.
I mean, basically, you're going to be driving a Civic that looks like a Mercedes-Benz.
Right.
I mean, Civics these days drive pretty well. So will that sell? Yeah, probably.
Well,
Civics sell at 17 to 20.
Yeah.
and not in Mercedes world.
Well, I mean, but it's like, is it going to be an ILX?
Yeah.
Like an Acura ILX is a car that people don't like. We don't like testing. When we tested it, owners tell us that they don't like this vehicle. It looks like an Acura, but it doesn't drive like one.
Wait, did you see the rundown sheet? Because that kind of leads into a discussion about satisfaction and what and what owners are telling us about vehicles. It sounds it's so staged. It's utterly staged. But owner satisfaction comes up with those two vehicles as key players.
It's okay. I'm sorry. It's okay to be staged. I mean, we don't just hang around here with cameras here. So.
Oh, that's true. I mean, it's just random off the top of our head that we're going to talk about this, and he had the paper there. We were disappointed with them when we tested them. We weren't really happy with how they performed, and it's not just like, oh, it's a small car, oh, it's uncut. Like, no. Across the board, they did not perform well. So poorly that they became what kind of airport cars here. The keys sit on the board on the far side.
That's a dark place.
No one takes them home, and then they say to the shop manager, John Ibbotson, "Hey, I gotta go to the airport. I'm gonna go on vacation for a week." He goes, "Oh, we'll take the GLA." And this one's like, "Oh, I gotta drive the GLA for 20 miles to the airport. How poor me!" But that's the attitude towards these cars because they're so disappointing. But it's not just us. Our owners tell us that. The same thing with those compact, subcompact luxury SUVs, as well as the subcompact luxury sedans.
It's almost as if we do some kind of survey to kind of quantify.
How does that happen?
So this week we released our new results of our owner satisfaction survey, and this is a huge survey. We've got over 500,000 vehicles in this survey, and we're just asking people, basically, did you make the right choice? If you could go back in time and buy the car again, would you do it again?
Knowing everything you know now, would you go back?
And it's kind of an interesting, metric of satisfaction, because what we're basically asking you, did you get what you thought you were going to get? Did you get surprised, or were you disappointed in what you got? And what we find is these little luxury vehicles, which they think they're getting an Acura, they think they're getting a Mercedes-Benz, they think they're getting a luxurious vehicle, and then they find out they're not. These are the people that really are very dissatisfied with the purchase.
Right. I mean, driving them and putting through paces, Ryan. What is the sense you got with the CLA, GLA, as well as the ILX? Because again, they're carrying that cachet of a Mercedes or an Acura. An Acura might not have the same level of sales and name recognition as Lexus. You had the Lexus Infinity and then Acura, Japanese brands launched in the 80s as luxury lines. Acura really was a well-regarded name for a while.
Absolutely, yeah.
ILX is an example of how they're doing, really.
Yeah, and the ILX, I mean, when we tested the ILX, I can remember just being shocked that it was, I forget what the price tag was on it, but it was way more than I would pay for a car that's, it was rode horribly, really. It was very stiff, not fun to drive. There's nothing engaging about it, and you could have bought a Civic for a fraction of the price almost, and been probably just as satisfied if you didn't need that badge or maybe the leather seats or some of those frills, but just not a good car.
And
the GLA, the CLA and the GLA were even more of an upset, because I was expecting Mercedes-Benz. I mean, no offense to Acura, but when I get a Mercedes, I expect a level of luxury.
Higher level luxury.
And another stiff riding. The interior was okay, but no C-Class or E-Class.
Exactly.
And I understand that it's a lower level thing, but I almost don't know if there's room for these lower level luxury brand cars, because like the ILX, they're stepping on their toes with the Civic.
Right.
A high level Civic is pretty nice.
Pretty nice car. Exactly.
And now you have this overpriced luxury, and what are they doing? They're actually so you buy this ILX and then you're disappointed in the brand, really.
Right. They're tarnishing the brand name.
If you went a little lower and had a Civic, you might be you'd appreciate that a little more.
It's about your expectations.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
It was
it's
like,
a
wow,
perceived
I got something
expectation.
luxurious with a Honda brand.
Yeah.
So I just want to pipe in here and just kind of talk about some of the numbers. We're talking about Acura. We're talking about and the GL. The very lowest owner satisfaction of any particular vehicle was the Mercedes-Benz GLA. So they were more disappointed in that than any other vehicle. And for the brand, the bottom of the list is Acura. And Acura, I think, gets a double whammy because you go and buy an Acura and you're like, oh, I'm getting something luxurious and I'm getting something reliable because I've chosen a Japanese luxury car brand and Japanese must be reliable. And it turns out Acuras are not reliable. I mean, our reliability data shows that. Now, on the other end of that, right at the top is, Tesla and Porsche. Right below that is Genesis. So Genesis is, what are your expectations of a Genesis? Well, I might know that it's really kind of a big Hyundai, right? Yeah. But it's like you get something that's like, wow, it's from Hyundai. Wow, this is a really luxurious vehicle. So you're almost going to get, it's almost over-delivering for what you expected.
It does. I think it still has an anti-snob appeal.
Sure.
and people are shunning it for the wrong reasons. But it's not taking, for example, an existing vehicle now in the Hyundai lineup and gussying it up like the ILX.
Right.
But it's also filling a niche that you can actually aspire to, and you have room to be a player. Versus Mercedes stuck in a sense of, okay, we have to keep drilling down. We've made big sedans and coupe-ified sedans, and we have multiple SUVs, and that's the only place they can go is down because they already have Maybach and that line. And once you go down there, that's where you start tarnishing. And people are telling you the one thing before you jump in. I remember the first couple years of the GLA in the survey. The first year, people were like, oh, it's great. You look at year 2, it plummeted. So everyone had that shine, the brand new car, and then it went down. But like you said, people still are buying them.
Well, I mean, I think in Genesis is really an interesting thing. I mean, and actually, as you speak, here, I think I'm starting to understand the Genesis strategy because. To me, when Genesis launched, and I'm like, how on earth did they not launch a new luxury brand without a small SUV or a midsize SUV? Because everyone who's buying luxury cars is buying SUVs. Yeah. But to your point, they launched with these big sedans that it wasn't a gussied up Hyundai. Right. There are not, maybe with a Kia Stinger now, it is kind of a crossover. But truly, it wasn't like they took a Sonata and then they put a big grill on it or
threw an all-wheel drive. Right.
But the truth is that if you take a Kia Sorento and make that a Genesis, you're going to have extremely competitive vehicles.
Certainly. And it's going to appeal to the value shopper.
Oh, absolutely.
But the value shopper who has some cash, there's people who buy, they can afford the Mercedes, but they will move to that because you do see a lot of them, not a huge amount, but you do see them out there. So there are people who are attracted to the value proposition and not so worried about a 3-pointed star or the 4 rings or the BMW Roundel.
And it's a nice car, through and through. It's a really nice car.
Definitely is. Well, I want to get into some viewer questions because we have a couple really interesting ones. First off is about our test program. How do you determine what trim level car to test? For example, you tested the top GMC Acadia Denali and Chevrolet Traverse Premier, but then you tested the mid-level Honda Pilot EXL and the Toyota Highlander XLE. I'm not sure that would be a fair comparison. I'm going to throw this one to Jake. There's not really a fair comparison. A lot of it is not how we're buying, but how the manufacturer positions it, right?
Well, it's actually several different things. So on the one hand, we're looking at what they're actually producing. Because we want to get a representative model of what you're going to see at the dealership. We don't want to get the one-off or whatnot.
Like the press sample version,
the press sample version.
2% are sold with 20-inch wheels and all that.
Exactly. Yeah. But the other part is making it compatible in the group. So in terms of like the GMC, we're looking at that, and it's positioned as somewhat of a luxury vehicle, putting it with a group of luxury vehicles. So we're going to equip it like that. So it's going to have more equipment on that GMC Denali than like a Pilot or a Highlander. But if someone is looking for a Pilot or a Highlander, they're maybe looking at the Chevrolet. So that's kind of it. And then just again, the equipment. We're also looking at price points. I mean, if you look at the categories we put them in, they're almost proxies of your price. So there's a bunch of things that go into that.
Right. Some of it could be also with the, like you say, equipment, wanting to experience some equipment. And when they're putting either some stuff on a higher trim level, we want that as well.
Sometimes, but not really, because what we do is we actually go and rent different versions of the vehicles,
Right.
and we're able to experience that. So what we don't want to do is, and actually I would say maybe years past we would do that. It's a new piece of equipment.
Right.
We bought the only Hyundai Elantra and 10 years ago that had stability control or whatever, and no one else bought that car. We now have the ability, we can go and sample all this stuff without having the one, a $28,000 Elantra or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So for our second question, we're actually following up on a discussion from last episode. And the question is, I think you missed the point of the question about the emergency brakes. The old emergency brakes were manual, and you could pull them up even if the car's electronics were dead. If you have an electronic issue, I assume the electronic emergency brake will not work. Can you confirm or comment? So now I know he handled that question. I'm going to throw this to Ryan because Ryan actually went out and tried to answer the question out on our track.
Yeah, so I took the Honda Civic Si that we have, and I disconnected the battery completely from the car and put the car on the lift, got it off the ground so I could spin these wheels freely. I wasn't going to do this while I was driving unless someone wanted to be in the engine bay and disconnect the battery for me while I'm driving. But,
You chose wisely.
yeah, I figured. So I lifted the car up, I disconnected the battery, got in the car, obviously it was stone dead,
Right.
and pulled the e-brake, the electric e-brake, and it does nothing. Get out, spin the wheel, the rear wheels spin freely. This is one scenario if the battery is completely disconnected. Electrical issue while you're driving, I don't know what else could happen. I mean, there's a million scenarios that could potentially happen.
And how many thousands of miles, I don't recall it happening.
But the point is,
you could have electrical failure.
yeah, you could, absolutely. But the point is, that's a separate system from your hydraulic brakes. Even if you lost power, your brake booster or some power there, you're still going to have hydraulic pressure. You can stuff your foot to the floor, and you should be able to stop that car.
So the point is that yes, the viewer is absolutely right.
Right.
With an electric emergency brake, it
Yeah.
will not work. However, you will have normal brakes.
The
still.
chances of this situation happening are
Well, I mean, it could you have electrical failure, but you would have
both at the same time.
Having a
That's what I'm
hydraulic
saying.
failure
Yeah,
and
it's,
electrical failure.
right.
There's
One's hydraulic,
bigger worries
one's
about.
electrical.
Yeah, you have some real big issues if both of those go out on you. But it potentially, I guess it could happen. And at least in the case of the Honda Civic Si, it does not. The battery goes out, you don't have e-brake.
And was there any other vehicles that you took a look at, or?
So this led to a little more investigation.
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, and let me just preface by saying that
Yes.
when we answered the question last time, if you haven't looked, we tried it on the Honda Civic, but we said look in your manual because you may be able to use the parking brake as a emergency brake, which the Honda Civic manual says.
Yes, and it does work. I tried that while driving.
And the Honda
you
Civic.
pull it, and it modulates them for you, and you stop nicely.
Right.
And then we're using a couple Camrys for tire testing this year. So we have a hybrid that we're breaking in tires with, and I got in it to do something later in the day, and it has an electric e-brake. So,
And did you read the manual first?
I didn't read the manual, but I was on a closed test track.
You didn't see the show.
I didn't actually.
You didn't get that page of the safety manual.
Right. So I went out on the straightaway, and I pulled it at like 20, 30 miles an hour, and it locks them up completely. The rear wheels lock up completely. It went a little faster, it does it again. You have to hold it, but it locks them up completely. And then I read the manual. This is a parking brake. This is not an emergency brake. You will stop, but in what manner you stop, I don't know.
Well, and the
I didn't
same
get that
almost
far.
as just ripping up
It's
the
basically that's
parking
what's
brake the same way.
Yeah. There's no modulation there.
But I think just even, I love questions like this and all those things that we could actually prove and we didn't know the answers to that piece. And I would say the way Honda is dealing with it is better. However, they're certainly not communicating it to the drivers by having a big P on the button.
Right. What's interesting to me is, these electric e-brakes are relatively new. The cars that have these still are pretty good shape. They're not rotten, this, that, and the other thing. My dad's old Silverado, it's a 99 Silverado, completely rotted.
Because it's a New England car.
He steps on the brakes every now and again and it pops somewhere, and but he has an e-brake, a cable e-brake that can save him.
Right.
In time, what's going to happen with some of these cars,
Sure.
And on that note, we're going to wrap up this week's episode. Make sure you tune in next week for our final episode of the year. It's our personal picks episode, and one that a lot of people like putting together as well as commenting on. Also, make sure you send us a video like this one if you have any questions you want answered on the show.
Hey everybody, talking cars. I'm hoping this message gets to you. I'm thinking about maybe buying this Subaru over here, or maybe this Hyundai. I can't really decide. I hope this message gets to you. Maybe even that handsome guy, Mike Quincy, in Talking Cars. Anyway, love your show. Thanks.
You can send that off to cr.org/talkingcars. As always, the show notes below have links to what we discussed. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.